Hello! Before we get into today's video, please quickly check down below to see if you've subscribed. It's totally free and it allows you to never miss one of our stories. Amid the ruins of countless destroyed buildings, flames, and widespread chaos, innumerable creatures of various distinct species, never before seen on the planet, attacked from all directions. The general of the Central Human Force had declared that all those strange beings, regardless of their race, would be destroyed and buried right there in the ground. They would serve as a reminder for humanity to always remember how powerful they were, where fearing any other civilization should never be an option. A human clad in technological armor was tearing through several of these creatures with a plasma sword in one hand and a laser cannon in the other. He seemed invincible, and each time his energy blade crossed the body of an enemy, a number beside him increased, followed by the abbreviation EXP. When he suffered an attack from one of his adversaries, causing his armor to spark, a red bar above him shrank in size. Demonstrating fury, he opened his arms and a shockwave echoed around him, destroying at least 30 enemies in a single blow. The numbers intensified until a glowing phrase appeared above him. "Level up!" The character roared with pride as the remaining horrendous galactic monsters fled in fear. "You see that?" a childlike voice said, entering that electronic world. An audio icon appeared next to the interface displaying the hero's information in the upper corner of the screen.
"I'm the best!" the voice continued. "These aliens are nothing. We're gonna bury them all, every single one. None of them will be left!"
Another soldier in similar armor appeared at his side. He also wielded an impressive plasma sword, although it was smaller and had a thinner blade. Unlike the first, his weapon had a cold hue.
"That's only because of your upgraded gear. You're not that good."
Another childlike voice came from the icon representing this second character.
"That makes it too easy. I mean, who wouldn't be able to do it with that?"
The first one responded with an arrogant tone.
"Oh, get out of here. You're just saying that because you can't admit that I'm better than you,"
he retorted, making a clicking sound with his tongue. After saying that, the entire electric universe vanished. No more soldiers and unusual armor, advanced technological weapons, or sinister aliens everywhere. Only two boys remained, talking to each other behind their computers, separated by a distance of at least a mile.
"Better than you? Of course I am. You just wait until tomorrow and you'll see my level even higher than yours. I'll kill way more than you. You can count on that,"
said Johnny. Tom, listening on the other side of the call, chuckled and responded,
"You know, it's funny to hear you say that when in real life you're just a scaredy cat." "A scaredy cat?"
Johnny asked, his tone revealing a silly but growing anger.
"Say that to my face and you're gonna see who's scared then."
Tom just laughed harder. He laughed so much that his stomach hurt and his eyes watered. He couldn't get enough of how Johnny couldn't handle the slightest teasing.
"I will,"
Tom said, fully aware of what he was doing and anticipating the reaction to come. On the other side of the call, Johnny groaned in frustration, while Tom laughed even louder at his dear friend until he was out of breath. Finally catching his air, Tom placed his hands on his headset, ready to take it off, and said in a more neutral tone, free of the playful edge that had been present moments ago, showing he now had something else to do.
"It's just a joke. No need to take everything so seriously.
Anyway, I gotta go grab something to eat now. Wait for me, Johnny." Meanwhile, Johnny was getting ready to jump into another match, this time alone. He didn't know how to lose, so Tom took the opportunity to mess with him every now and then.
"You're gonna see who's scared. You're gonna see,"
Johnny grumbled, as the sound of the online match returned, echoing through his computer. He was about to venture off in search of farming better gear to compete with his friend, who had been leading for weeks.
"Whatever,"
Tom said, tossing his headset onto the keyboard and standing up from his chair to leave his room. On the other side of the screen, Johnny remained, enthusiastically pressing numerous keys on his keyboard. The clicking sounds could still be faintly heard through the headset left on the desk. Tom was a boy with a large bedroom, and his computer seemed far too powerful for someone his age. He crossed the room, casually rubbing one of his eyes with a finger in a carefree and slightly spoiled gesture, until he reached the door, placing his small hands on it and slowly opening it. With that, a brighter light temporarily flooded the room, which had only been lit by LED lights on the walls. He then closed the door behind him, now standing in a perfectly illuminated hallway. Walking down the hallway in his sock-clad feet, Tom noticed the paintings decorating the walls. None of them appeared to be replicas. Their brushstrokes carried life, executed with remarkable precision and artistry. They were large and elegant, giving the impression that the corridor belonged not to an ordinary home, but to a luxurious art museum. As he passed, he noticed that the door to another room was slightly ajar. It was his father's room, and curiosity sparked in Tom, wondering what his eccentric father might be doing at that hour. However, hunger gnawed at him far more insistently, convincing him to save the peek for later. Still, Tom made the effort to reach for the doorknob, intending to close it. And as he did, he glimpsed his father seated in a chair, talking on his phone. His father seemed so engrossed in the conversation that he didn't notice his son standing there. For Tom's naturally curious nature, nothing seemed particularly interesting about this scene at first. But just as he was about to shut the door, a peculiar phrase caught his attention. "We need to check the aliens again. They require urgent inspection." Tom's eyes widened at the sound of those words.
Aliens?
He whispered to himself.
I didn't know Dad played games too.
As he muttered this, his father continued speaking, seemingly unaware of his son's presence. Yes, of course, tonight for sure," he said, pausing briefly to listen before continuing. But that's not a problem. I can wait. Just don't forget. It has to be tonight. It's extra work, but it's critical. I'll just head to the store first, and then..." At that, Tom finally closed the door. Although the conversation intrigued him, his priorities soon shifted back to his immediate need. His stomach growled, demanding attention. While his father's cryptic words echoed through his mind, hunger took precedence. He darted off towards the kitchen, talking to himself.
What was Dad talking about?
Anyways, I wonder if there's still some burger left. He mused as he reached the kitchen and eagerly opened the refrigerator. To his delight, the coveted burger was there. He grabbed it and prepped it for himself, frying the patty and placing it on a bun slathered with ketchup. Sitting down at the kitchen table, Tom savored his meal with absolute delight. Burgers were his favorite food, and the time spent eating them was automatically his favorite time of the day. So, he stayed there for a few minutes, nearly finishing his meal and feeling his stomach much fuller, until he heard the sound of the front door closing. Since he lived alone with his father, it could only have been him. However, at that moment, he didn't care much about it. He took one last bite of the remaining piece of his hamburger and then went to the fridge to grab some orange juice. He had a habit of saving his drink for the end.
Oh, I feel so full now. That's good,
Tom said to himself, patting his now completely full belly.
Well, now I just need to go back. Johnny's got to be waiting for me.
He turned his gaze towards the hallway and walked off. Once again, slowly walking through the corridor, feeling a bit sluggish from still digesting his food and needing a bit of rest, he noticed his father's bedroom door slightly ajar once more.
How could he forget again?
Tom thought about his father.
It's fine, I'll close it, then.
With his small hand, he touched the doorknob, but just as he was about to push it shut, he couldn't resist taking a quick look inside the room. He rarely had the chance to see it. At first, he hesitated, thinking his father might return and catch him in there, and considering he had just left, it was likely that he'd take some time to come back, and that meant that there would be enough time for Tom to sneak a quick peek and then leave. He figured it wouldn't be a problem.
It's not going to hurt anybody,
he thought to himself.
I'll go in, I'll look around for a few minutes, and then I'll leave. Dad's not even going to notice.
And with that, he decided to step inside. His father's bedroom wasn't anything particularly unique or peculiar. It was just a bed, a few pieces of furniture, a still-on computer, and a phone next to it. It was basically like an office, which his father used to work from home even after a long day. Although he spent most of his time at the office building, his work was so important that he barely had time to rest. In this room, which should have been a place to relax after a long day, a huge pile of papers could be seen on his desk. Looking around, Tom took short steps, eventually reaching a chair in front of the computer, and sat down. Still digesting his food, the desire to rest continued to weigh on him, and he decided to stay there for a bit. Just a few minutes until he felt more energized. Figured couldn't be an issue. So, he stared at the computer, even though he really didn't understand what he was looking at. Dad mentioned aliens earlier. Could he be playing the same game that I am? If so, he's gotta be here, Tom said as he prepared to grab the mouse. But suddenly, before his small arms could reach it, he got a fright. His father's phone, sitting right there on the desk, started ringing. His first instinct was to get up and run out of there as fast as possible, but halfway to the door, he began to slow down. His hands, which had been eagerly reaching for the doorknob, hesitated. He stopped running, and he found himself standing in the middle of the room, lost in thought. Wait, but if Dad is also playing... Well, then we could play together. I gotta find this out. With that, Tom turned back towards the computer, but unable to bear the phone ringing incessantly, he impulsively decided to answer it. And as soon as the call connected, a man's gruff voice abruptly began to speak. James, my dear James, how could I forget? Our work is almost done for today, he said with a certain excitement in his voice, as if he loved what he did. But I have to update you that I had to change the password for the computer terminal. Well, I mean, we do this every 3 days as an extra security measure since we're dealing with something that requires maximum security. You know, the boss asked for it. At that moment, Tom started to think that this man might be a bit of a chatterbox, as he barely gave the other person a chance to speak. That last hacker had serious consequences, so the old man got paranoid. But who wouldn't, huh? I understand him. We're dealing with one of the most important issues for humanity. After all, aliens exist. Who would have thought? Still hard to process. And it's been a while since they found out, too. I feel lucky that I have this job. Tom just couldn't understand most of what he was saying, but when he mentioned aliens, well, from that moment on, his attention was fixed on every word the man said, until the man broke the fact that since it was a call and not just listening to someone, at some point, Tom would have to respond. Hey, are you listening to me? The man said, finally noticing how quiet his counterpart was. Huh? James? Answer me! I want to rest, so I'll be quick here. At that moment, Tom froze. What now? My dad's not here. What do I do? He thought nervously. So nervously that all of a sudden, he let out an uncontrollable fart. Very loud. From the burger that he had eaten a little while ago. The sound echoed on the call, breaking the flow that had been there. There was a pause for a few seconds before the conversation continued. James, the man insisted, trying to understand. Did you answer in the bathroom? He said, laughing loudly right after. Oh, such professionalism never misses a call. Good guy. But look, I have to go. Just know the password is 22548956, grave, all lowercase, yard, 4 for the A, keeper, 3 for the last E, 22548956, graveyard with a 4 for the A, keeper with a 3 for the last E. It's a bit long, but I'll send you an encrypted email with it, too. Gotta go, buddy. See ya. And after that, the man hung up. What was that? Tom said, holding the phone, which was now emitting a continuous beeping sound in his ear. He then put it back in place and began repeating what he heard, now in whispers. 2254, he repeated, looking at the ceiling as if forming a mental picture while walking in circles. 8956. Then he suddenly stopped in his steps, as if shocked.
225489556. Grave, all lowercase. Yard, 4 for the A. Keeper, 3 for the last E.
Tom had an amazing memory, and from that moment on, he would never forget that sequence. He didn't know what it was for, but the word at the end had caught his attention so much that he couldn't leave it out, along with that code. Finally, he sat in the armchair facing his dad's computer, reaching for the mouse, and started browsing without thinking too much, hoping to at least find the game that he liked.
It's gotta be here somewhere,
he said, moving the mouse across the desktop. There were countless icons that he had never seen before, folders with strange names and random numbers, obscure and odd programs that a child like him had no idea about, but which carried a level of importance that he couldn't even imagine. If his father knew all of this was within reach of a simple kid, he would be putting the future of humanity in the hands of someone so naive.
There's nothing interesting here,
Tom complained, frustration in his voice.
Then how does Dad know about aliens then if he's never played the game?
Until he finally saw an icon that caught his eye. A gray head with dark eyes. Behind it, there was a cross and a tomb, like a cemetery.
Ah! Alien!
Tom almost shouted, clicking as fast as he could, thinking it might be one of the games from the franchise that he knew. The screen went black, and a loading bar appeared, until it was replaced by a login and password box. The login had his father's name, but the password field was still empty.
I can't play the game without his password,
Tom said, dissatisfied. What am I going to do? He stared at the screen for a few minutes. It was asking for a password, and not long ago he had heard one. It took him a while to finally make the connection to the phone call from his dad's colleague. He began typing in that entire code he had heard, and he hit enter. The info boxes disappeared, and the game Tom had hoped for started to load. Little did he know what was actually coming. At that moment, the screen turned white for a few moments, nearly blinding him for a time due to the intense brightness and contrast with the dark room. He squinted his eyes, waiting for something to happen, until 2 info boxes appeared again. One said, Access Files. The other, Open Portal. And when he read that last one, he got excited.
So it's really like that. Portals to access other worlds. It's like a shortcut to another galaxy,
he said, clicking it without a second thought. The option boxes disappeared, replaced with the text, Loading Portal. He kept swinging his little legs that didn't reach the floor, anxiously waiting for the game to start. On top of the monitor was a webcam, and it started glowing, gradually becoming brighter. He stared at it, puzzled, raising one of his eyebrows.
But why is it doing that?
Until the brightness became much stronger than the white of the screen before, shooting out of the webcam in a continuous and somewhat explosive cylinder of energy, causing him to shield his eyes and fall off of the armchair onto the carpeted floor.
Ow! Oh, what's happening?
Tom exclaimed, looking around as he saw the sinister flow of energy, accompanied by small lightning bolts, emanating from what was supposed to be just a simple camera. The energy gathered in the middle of the room, forming an energy circle so strong and strange that it created a massive gust of wind. Tom got up from the floor, his hair billowing wildly, barely able to keep his balance, watching everything around him fall due to the intense force pushing everything over. He tried to take a few steps forward, moving closer to the phenomenon to get a better look. He saw a spiral swirling, carrying shades of dark and a light hue, accompanied by the static shock-like sound. Suddenly, the wind stopped. The flow of energy stabilized, and the spiral now spun in a calm manner. Wasn't exactly like the games, but very similar. The portal he had hoped for was right in front of him.
Wow!
Tom said, moving even closer.
Is this real?
He slowly touched his index finger to the center of it, feeling his finger being pulled in that direction. He quickly withdrew it after feeling a strange sensation.
Oh, this works?
Tom said, wide-eyed.
So that means
He took slow steps towards the unknown gateway.
I'm finally going to meet the aliens in person? I'm finally going to see the world from my favorite game up close?
Tom finally gathered his courage and stepped in, feeling himself being completely pulled in as the charge crossed through every cell of his body. The shock-like sound intensified as though he were in the middle of a storm full of thunder, accompanied by a static hiss, and the same black and blue colors swirling around him, but always following the spiral pattern. When he realized what was happening and the process finally ended, he found himself in a place that looked nothing like the chaotic battle scenes he was used to watching on screen with his friend Johnny. In fact, all around him was a massive white room filled with countless capsules. When he approached one, he saw a gray body inside the transparent front of the glass compartment. It seemed lifeless. And there were hundreds of them. Is he inside of a cemetery? In the midst of an apocalyptic world filled with aliens from various civilizations, both intelligent and terrifying, a warrior in technological armor crossed the battlefield, attacking several enemies with his pair of weapons, shooting lasers in all directions, and slicing through the bodies of deadly creatures with his cold-colored plasma sword. He was fast and strong, but even though he was a destructive and almost unstoppable being, he was still not satisfied with his power. Every time he destroyed an enemy, he exploded them into multiple particles, turning into a handful of random items. As he defeated more of them, always checking the useful things they dropped, he had an expression of anger and dissatisfaction. He always cried out for more and more enemies to kill.
Where is it? Where is the sword that I so long for? Unacceptable! So much power awaits me, but why haven't I reached it yet?
He said, his voice, though human, carrying a tone as if he were a god, or more precisely, a god of war. Saying this, he quickened his pace across the bloody field, destroying more and more, watching the fluid of his enemies spill everywhere. And when he saw that one was larger than the others, he rushed towards it, wielding his sword to strike it anxiously with a devastating blow. That being seemed not only bigger, but also more important. There was something different about it, so he couldn't help but charge towards this figure. And when his sword finally crossed its torso and let out a cry of pain, the explosion of particles happened again, but this time with different colors. A warm, bright color, more powerful than the hundreds of explosions he'd seen in the last few minutes. When the items fell before him, he saw one of them glittering in his eyes, and as he got a closer look, he couldn't believe that among them was what he had been searching for, an S-level plasma sword. Bigger than the current one, stronger, with an impressive amount of attack bonuses, even greater than the one that Tom wielded. As soon as he grabbed it, Johnny instantly pressed Alt-Tab, minimizing his game screen, heading to Discord and calling Tom.
I did it! I finally did it! Come see, Tom. Now I'm going to be more powerful than you, and there won't be any room for you to compete with me from now on.
Johnny said excitedly, expecting that, considering all that time, his friend should have returned by now. But the more he spoke, the more silence he heard. It had been over an hour, and his friend hadn't said a word. His icon was already idle, which indicated that he hadn't been online for a while.
Well, that's strange, Johnny said to himself. And he said he was just going to go eat.
And he grew impatient, waiting another hour, also taking the opportunity to rest his finger from frantic battles. However, as his anxiety to show off his new equipment only grew, he couldn't take it anymore, and he grabbed his bike. It was starting to get dark, but even so, he left his house and he rode towards Tom's under the starry sky. At the heart of a massive white room filled with countless strange capsules, Tom wandered through the corridors, surrounded by the bodies displayed within the glass. His fascinated gaze swept across the room, showing a deep sense of awe. Indeed, those dark eyes and gray skin reminded him a great deal of creatures from the game he loved. Or, to be more specific, those terrifying aliens. Tom walked around, mouth agape, sliding his fingers along the capsules. He was genuinely stunned by the reality of it all. Although most of the beings didn't have an exact resemblance to what he had seen rendered on his computer screen for entertainment, some bore enough of a similarity to impress him deeply and confirm his suspicions. He spent what felt like an immeasurable amount of time there, certainly not a short while. The monstrous intergalactic creatures had such fascinating appearances and physiologies that he found himself distracted for far longer than he realized. He wondered where exactly these beings had come from, and if they were truly lifeless. All of them had their eyes closed, and their skin appeared dry and withered, leading him to believe that there wasn't a trace of life left in them. He sighed in disappointment, realizing that he wouldn't get to see them in action, unlike the exhilarating battles he enjoyed in his digital, fictional world. But just as boredom began to creep in, something unexpected happened. The portal he had used to enter was still open. Tom had wandered so far within the seemingly endless room that the swirling wave of energy was now at least 500 meters away, and even from that distance, it was easy to spot, with its brilliant blue hues interwoven with black spirals standing out against the stark white surroundings. To his surprise, the energy appeared unstable again, much like it did when he had initially passed through. The fierce wind filled the space, tousling his hair even from such distance. His eyes sharpened as he noticed something, or someone, emerging through the gateway. He ran towards the portal, and as he got close enough to discern who it was, he froze in disbelief. "Johnny?" he exclaimed, hands clutching his head and eyes wide with shock. There he was, Johnny, holding the ever-present baseball in his hand. The same ball he always carried around. Johnny was a boy with autism whose hyper-focus on baseball was unmatched. He often carried the ball, savoring its texture, even when there was no need for it. Hey, what are you doing here?" Tom asked as he reached his friend. Johnny looked around, confused about where he had ended up, but soon focused on Tom, grabbing his hand eagerly.
"You're not gonna believe it. I did it. I got the sacred weapon!"
Johnny exclaimed, shaking his friend's hand enthusiastically. He was utterly consumed by the achievement that he had just unlocked in the game, almost forgetting that he might now be in a hidden part of the Earth few adults could ever dream of reaching. But Johnny, look where we are. This is the game world. Forget about the weapon. You don't need to beat me at this anymore. Look around you. The aliens, they're real, Tom said excitedly, grabbing his hand by the shirt and pulling him towards one of the capsules. When Johnny laid eyes on the creature within, its face so strikingly similar to the monsters he fought daily, albeit virtually, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Its appearance wasn't a perfect match, but the resemblance was undeniable. The claws, the fierce, warrior-like yet terrifying physique, was all too surreal. But Johnny, overwhelmed by fear and awe, made a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of the night. As he stumbled backward, startled by the horrifying sight, his hand accidentally pressed a button on another capsule. Sound of machinery activating caught his attention, and when he began to turn around, his stomach dropped. The glass began to slide, making way for one of the creatures to emerge. Thankfully, it didn't move. "Oh my God, Johnny! You opened it!" Tom exclaimed, stepping closer to the capsule to get a better look at the monster's face inside. Johnny, meanwhile, clasped his hands over his face, utterly incredulous at what he had just done. It all happened so quickly that he began slipping into a mild state of shock. Tom, despite his earlier excitement and curiosity about the place, realized that Johnny wasn't prepared for any of this. Suddenly, Johnny started crying. He dropped to his knees, and his baseball rolled from his trembling hands to Tom's feet. But Johnny," Tom said, picking up the ball with a firm grip. He walked over to his friend, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, buddy. They're dead. This is just a graveyard. Look, they're not even moving. Don't worry, they can't harm us. I think that they're kept here as a reminder of how unstoppable people are. You know, just like the game, right? You're a hero, aren't you? Right? So act like a hero." But Johnny couldn't stop crying.
I didn't want to be here. I wasn't ready for a place this scary."
His sobs echoed loudly, carrying through the vast chamber, reaching places and ears they should never have. Running with a peculiar device in his hand, a man dressed in an outfit resembling that of a guard was heading toward the portal that had been activated. The energetic splendor caught his eye. Though he couldn't understand why it had been triggered, nevertheless, it always surprised him when it happened. He had heard the cry of someone echoing from far away, causing him to wake up from the nap that he had took during his shift. Although his job was to protect an incredibly secretive asset, this place was so difficult to reach that literally nothing unusual ever happened, as only a few people had the ability to open that entrance, like scientists and high-ranking government officials. What could it have been? And at this hour? How strange. They always notify us in advance without visits. Also, what was that I heard? The man thought aloud, running while pondering these things with a hurried step, anxious and feeling breathless. He knew that if he had made a mistake, it could be terrible, might even cost him his job, especially because he had spent much of this time sleeping. Maybe he had missed something important, or maybe avoided something catastrophic. Many of those beings were dead, but some were immortal and only paralyzed. A little oxygen for a few minutes and they could come back to life. If someone had opened any of the capsules, it could certainly be fatal. And when he reached the portal, he saw the two children. His eyebrows raised when he realized how improbable it was. Not only that there were children there, but one of them was the son of the leading scientist behind the project. What the hell? What's he doing here? Isn't that Dr. Thompson's son? The special guard said, running towards the two boys, who, upon seeing him, began to run. Hey! Come back here! Come on, Johnny, we gotta go. Get up, we gotta go, said Tom, pulling his friend toward the portal. Johnny took a while to get up, but Tom simply slapped his friend's face, which made him snap back to reality. Hurry up, you idiot! We're in trouble! Johnny's expression turned stunned, and when he looked back and he saw the guard was approaching, he instantly stopped crying and quickened his pace. Where's my baseball? I can't see it! Johnny shouted desperately, as that was the one thing he now cared most about. It's here, I got it, don't worry, Tom said, running while pulling his friend by the hand, showing the ball in the other. See? I got it! Let's go, hurry! The security agent, while running, pressed a button on his device. Ahead of the two was the portal, which was now closing. But it was supposed to stay open for 2 hours, Tom cursed. It's gotta be this guy. Come on, Johnny, hurry, run! But he's catching up! Johnny screamed after looking back, panic in his voice. This guy's gonna catch me, Tom! He kept shouting, now losing speed. Unfortunately, Johnny was a very sedentary kid. He barely had enough energy for sports, and now he was paying the price for that. Tom had to reduce his pace so he wouldn't leave his friend behind, and considered pulling his hand again. But seeing that the guard was too close, he came up with an idea. Johnny, I'm sorry, but there's no other choice. Sorry for what? What are you gonna do? Then, Tom suddenly stopped running, began to move one of his arms in a spinning motion that Johnny could recognize very well. No! Tom, wait, no! Then, Tom threw Johnny's favorite and so special baseball with all his strength and at an incredible speed towards the guard, hitting him squarely in the middle of the legs and causing him to fall from the pain. I'll get you another one, said Tom, pulling his friend by the hand, and both of them running toward the opening. But there will never be another one like that. You can't understand, Johnny whimpered, tears streaming down his face. We will come back to get it someday, I promise. And the two jumped toward the threshold, which soon sealed just seconds after them. And that was the day when two children were able to see up close the secret graveyard that hid hundreds of aliens from different empires. Horrifying beings that had once put humanity in immense danger, but were now nothing more than research rats. Tom and Johnny ended up in his friend's room, both panting as they watched the entrance shut behind them. Oh, God. Well, that was better than any game we've ever played, don't you think, Johnny? Tom said innocently, unaware of the magnitude of what had just happened.